This is the result. This is where you will end up.
Now, the incident led to a massive raid on the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club.
This thing God is avenged.
He has what appears to be a machete in his hand.
The one who needed the glass were dead because he was going to testify against him.
When gang leaders get life sentences, their reactions are often intense. From anger to shock, they can't believe what's happening. In this video, we'll look at the most powerful and unforgettable responses to life in prison.
In 2018, after Duran stepped up to pick out a shooting suspect in a lineup, she was lured, kidnapped, shot 10 times, and killed before her body was set on fire.
Let's start with our first case. 3 men have been sentenced in the murder of 28-year-old Simone Duran. Duran's body was found burning near a dumpster in the 700 block of Nile Street in Golden on November 5, 2018. Alonzo Quintana, 28, was sentenced to life in prison plus 160 years. Quintana was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree kidnapping, aggravated intimidation of a witness, retaliation against a witness, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with evidence, and other charges.
He wants to send a strong message to gang members.
This is the result. This is where you will end up.
Rene Rosales, 36, was sentenced to 150 years in prison. Rosales was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with evidence, and being an accessory to a crime.
It took a jury 4 hours to convict these 3 men in connection with the murder of Simone Duran.
Abel Gallegos, 36, was sentenced last month to life in prison plus 163 years. Gallegos was convicted of multiple charges, including first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree kidnapping, retaliation against a witness, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with evidence. And here is the wrap-up of our first case. Here's how this case begins.
Is there anything that you would like to say, sir?
Nothing.
A 5-year full sentence, all of which is to be served at the ACI.
In June 2021, Joseph Lancia, the president of the Rhode Island chapter of the Hells Angels, began serving a 5-year sentence. Lancia, 30, faced severe charges after a violent incident in June 2019. He pleaded no contest to felony assault and carrying a gun without a license. The more severe charges, such as discharging a firearm during a violent crime, were dropped as part of an appeal deal.
After reaching a deal with prosecutors, 30-year-old Joseph Lancia of Smithfield pleaded no contest to felony assault and battery charges and carrying a gun without a license. The more serious charges of discharging a firearm when committing a crime of violence and assault with intent to commit murder, they were dismissed as part of the deal. Lancia was sentenced to serve 5 years in prison. Our Tim White was at today's hearing and will have a full report coming up.
28-year-old Joseph Lancia is facing new charges after an altercation at the Cadillac Lounge in Providence last night. Officers on detail at the club say they saw Lancia punch a man in the face, knocking him unconscious. That man did go to the hospital to get checked for any head injuries. Lancia is being held until his arraignment, which is expected tomorrow. He is already charged with assault with intent to murder after he fired a gun at a passing truck last week.
The case began when Lancia fired a gun at a truck driven by Richard Starnino, a former prospect for the Hells Angels. Police reported that Lancia shot at Starnino as he went by the Hells Angels headquarters in Providence.
Video from the scene that night back on June 6th of what appeared to be a violent attack. According to police, 3 young men got into an argument with several bikers outside of a bar near Newport Avenue and Bacon. One man was stabbed in the chest, another was knocked out. Now, that night, police arrested one suspect. There was an investigation, and since then, the case ended up in the hands of a grand jury. In the end, they charged 17 people. A news conference just got started upstairs on the 13th floor of the Hall of Justice. We'll be hearing from the DA's office as well as nearly a dozen other members of law enforcement, including the ATF, the San Diego Sheriff's Department, as well as San Diego Police and several other police departments from this area, from Oceanside to Escondido, National City to Chula Vista. So this certainly appears to be a widespread investigation.
This incident stemmed from an ongoing dispute between the 2 men. The shooting was captured on the clubhouse's security cameras, which became vital evidence against Lancia. Judge Kristen Rogers presided over the case, and during the sentencing, she asked Lancia if he had anything to say. He simply replied, nothing. The courtroom was filled with Hells Angels members who supported Lancia while he was handcuffed.
At his arraignment, prosecutors say the state police have video of the shooting. Now, the incident led to a massive raid on the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club on Messer Street in Providence yesterday afternoon. State police say they seized multiple firearms and ammunition from the clubhouse. It's unclear if any of those weapons...
Attorney General Peter Narana emphasized the seriousness of gang-related violence, stating that Lancia represented a significant threat to public safety. He noted that cases involving organized crime like this one are a priority for his office. Prosecutors Jim Baum and Joseph McBurney handled the case, presenting a solid argument for a harsh sentence due to the violent nature of Lancia's actions. As part of his sentence, Lancia will be on probation for 10 years after release. Additionally, the judge issued a no-contact order to protect Starnino for 8 years. Here, we conclude the details of this case.
What's the last job? Mechanic? Mechanic. You're charged with murder. Do you understand what you're charged with?
Yes, sir.
Let's kick off the breakdown of this case. David Adam Pate, a man sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of Ricky James. The disturbing events occurred on October 8, 2018, in Lancaster, South Carolina, when Pate led James into a wooded area under pretenses.
Something along the lines of, I'm going back with somebody. So when he gets to turn around, just go out and stick him in the throat one time. Just right there. As far as I can push him. And said, she go to see him all over going. Get the arms and sling it around and see the side start. How many times have you do that? I don't know, but I had a vehicle at 9 times. In the here or in the neck? All in the neck. Back to his head. I couldn't cut through the ball of that, so. Well, I was going to go back and cut him up where I can drag him on. But I couldn't find a hacksaw blade. I was looking for one, I couldn't ever find one. But did you ever cut him in the chest? Oh, maybe.
Once in the woods, Pate attacked James, stabbing him multiple times. The violence did not stop there. After inflicting fatal wounds, Pate robbed James of his belongings and callously concealed his naked body beneath branches and leaves. This scene was discovered days later by local children playing in the area, who stumbled upon the decomposing body.
I tried to strip him off, so whenever he was decayed, he was like bleeding, you know what I'm saying? And it was just like somebody laying there with clothes on. But like I said, I tried to pick him up. I tried to drag his head and drag him, I couldn't do it. I turned him around, grab his feet, and tried to drag him, I couldn't do that. And I pulled him stupid, I'm so tired. Because I've been drinking, you know, dehydration and stuff. And I've been up all night. And I hadn't got so strong, I'm back and I'm doing all the drugs and stuff. But I just leave him laying there. I push him off the side a little bit. When I get to the house, I find a piece of rope somewhere I know where I work from.
Following the discovery, law enforcement quickly focused their investigation on Pate, arrested for disorderly conduct just weeks prior. Detectives gathered evidence and conducted interviews indicating Pate as the prime suspect. He was charged with murder after an autopsy confirmed that James died from multiple stab wounds. The case was tried in the Lancaster County Court, where Judge David C. Norton presided over the proceedings. Prosecutors presented a compelling case against Pate, detailing the brutal nature of the crime and emphasizing the senselessness of the murder. They argued that Pate's actions were deliberate and completely disregarded human life.
My brother was, as the solicitor gave me what was going on with the case, he said, supposedly he said, I killed him because he came to the woods with me. While I was small and talking to him about this, but my brother was the type of person who had no strings to the and everybody should have failed. His only weakness was that the drunk. Started to drink, he started trusting me. But besides that, he was a good guy. And I hope that you give him all you get, like just let him suffer.
During the trial, Pate Pate's defense attempted to argue that he acted in self-defense, claiming that James had provoked him. However, the evidence overwhelmingly rejected this narrative. Witnesses testified about Pate's behavior leading up to the murder and how he had tempted James into a helpless situation.
Those people suffer back then.
This man slayed my brother for no reason. He admitted. He admitted. People like that ain't supposed to live on the earth. People like that. Devils, man. You devil, man. You're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer. Because they say God is a vengeance. Thank you, God, boy.
On February 16, 2023, after review, David Adam Pate was found guilty of first-degree murder. Judge Norton sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, reflecting the severity of his crime. Here, we conclude the details of this case.
Suspects identified as Jose Muniz in the white t-shirt, Jose Tavares dressed in black, and Danelle Fernandez wearing a green do-rag are walking or running with steely-eyed conviction.
In June 2018, the gang members were trying to kill a rival in the Bronx.
Let's move ahead to our fourth case. On a warm June evening in 2018, the Bronx community was shattered by the brutal murder of 15-year-old Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz. Jr., an aspiring police officer and member of the NYPD Explorers program, was mistaken for a rival gang member by the notorious Trinitarios gang. It all began when Jr. left his apartment to lend a friend $5. As he walked through the streets, he was suddenly chased by a group of gang members.
The 4-block chase that led to Jr.'s murder.
Desperate to escape, Jr. ran into a nearby shop, hoping for safety.
Suspects identified as Jose Muniz in the white t-shirt, Jose Tavares dressed in black, and Danelle Fernandez wearing a green do-rag are walking or running with steely-eyed conviction.
But the gang members followed him inside, dragging him out despite the store owner's attempts to protect him. The footage showed the faces of the attackers and the brutal nature of the assault.
Oblivious to what's happening inside, it is 19 seconds before Jr. will be dragged to the sidewalk. It took at least 10 seconds to pull Jr. away from the back counter, the panicked teen knocking over a potato chip stand as he struggled to stay inside. Camera 1 in the cereal aisle shows Jr. desperately trying to grab the ATM machine before the owner and others wave the group outside. 2 hospital employees holding hands have just passed the front door when Jr. is pulled outside to be murdered. Police say the frenzied attack took 20 seconds, starting with Muniz hacking at the teen with a machete and Elvin Garcia, a scarf over his face, plunging a knife into Jr. 5 to 8 times. The lethal cut, police say, came from Martinez Estrella, seen pushing Jr. toward the bodega's door when the mob was finished.
Outside the shop, the gang members attacked Jr. with knives and a machete. The assault was swift and merciless, leaving Jr. with fatal wounds. The attackers fled the scene, leaving Jr. bleeding on the sidewalk.
The elderly customer inside the deli was determined to finish his sale, waving dollars at the owner who was on the phone. Modesto Cruz gave the customer his chips and soda.
Bystanders called for help, but it was too late. Jr. succumbed outside the shop, seeking help.
A crowd was gathering outside the store. Jr. had just used his last ounce of strength to run feebly up the block toward St. Barnabas Hospital. And as you can see, the dying teen crossed 3rd Avenue, a block from the bodega, and collapsed near the security booth, where he bled to death before he had a chance to make it to the emergency room.
With his feeble steps, he tried his best to reach the hospital, but all in vain as his power ran off and he died near the security booth. The security person instantly called 911, but it was too late.
It's the place where every alleged gang member was processed during an initial roundup of suspects that took nearly 3 weeks.
He has what appears to be a machete in his hand.
The police quickly identified and arrested the suspects. 5 key members of the Trinitarios gang were charged with Jr.'s murder: Antonio Rodriguez Hernandez Santiago, Jonaiki Martinez Estrella, Jose Muniz, Manuel Rivera, and Elvin Garcia. They were found guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, conspiracy, and gang assault. In the end, justice was served. The 5 defendants received lengthy prison sentences, with some facing life behind bars. Here, our 4th case winds up.
Check out this video we showed you last week that appears to show another YSL defendant, Khalif Adams, allegedly passing drugs to Young Thug, whose legal name is Jeffrey Williams. Authorities say Adams now faces new charges over the incident. Williams does not. District Attorney Fani Willis' office asked the court to find Williams responsible for delaying the jury selection. However, his attorneys say that motion was full of, quote, factual inaccuracies and could taint the jury pool. They claim Williams was startled by the handoff and immediately handed the drugs off to a sheriff's deputy nearby who walked up right away, which goes against claims he tried to hide it in his hand.
In May 2022, Atlanta rapper Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams, was arrested and faced severe charges under Georgia's RICO Act. He was accused of being the leader of the Young Slime Life, YSL gang, which prosecutors claimed operated as a criminal street gang. The charges against him included drug possession, possession with intent to distribute, and participation in gang activity.
Antonio Sledge was sentenced to 15 years probation after pleading guilty to conspiracy to violate the RICO Act and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The 41-year-old, also known as Munktunk, agreed to testify at next month's trial if called on to do so, although he can invoke his Fifth Amendment rights on the stand. Sledge may have already hurt Young Thug's chances at freedom, though, by admitting that YSL associates killed Donovan Thomas Jr. in 2015 on behalf of YSL, and he and others went to the rapper's house following the murder. Sledge alleged that Thug took care of himself and other affiliates by giving them cash to lay low following Thomas Jr.'s killing. He also acknowledged that a pair of gas stations were used as a location by YSL associates to sell drugs.
The case began when law enforcement launched an extensive investigation into YSL, linking the group to various violent crimes in Atlanta. On May 9, 2022, police arrested Young Thug and 27 other alleged gang members as part of a sweeping indictment that included 65 counts.
This is video from court of Young Thug in a blue jumpsuit. The rapper and 28 other defendants charged in a 56-count indictment alleging street gang activity, including robbery and murder.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis led the prosecution, emphasizing the need to tackle gang violence in the community. She described YSL as a gang that had caused significant harm, including shootings and drug trafficking. Judge Ural Glanville presided over the trial, quickly becoming one of the longest in Georgia's history. Young Thug pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his attorney, Brian Steele, argued that his client had committed no crimes. Steele insisted they would fight the case vigorously, claiming that the prosecution was misusing Young Thug's rap lyrics as evidence against him.
The Fulton County District Attorney claims the rapper, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams Jr., is part of a gang that used violence, drugs, and even murder to make money. Williams is one of 28 suspected members of the Young Slime Life charged with racketeering. He also faces criminal street gang charges. The 88-page, 56-count indictment lists more than 180 acts YSL members allegedly committed going back to January 2013. Williams' name comes up 35 times, including allegedly renting a car that was used in a murder, making terroristic threats while being kicked out of Perimeter Mall, receiving stolen guns, possession with intent to distribute meth, hydrocodone, and marijuana when he was arrested by Brookhaven police, and being part of a traffic stop in which police found numerous weapons, including an AK-47 with a 30-round magazine. The indictment claims Williams used his music, videos, and social media posts to spread YSL's power and territory. According to the indictment, YSL started in 2012 in the Cleveland Avenue area of southeast Atlanta, but has spread since then.
Prosecutors claimed that Young Thug rented a car used in a murder, and they pointed to his lyrics as proof of his involvement in gang activity. The case drew significant media attention, not only because of Young Thug's fame, but also because of its broader implications for the hip-hop community.
It appears the Fulton County RICO conspiracy case that broke this week against music stars Jeffrey Williams, a.k.a. Young Thug, and Sergio Kitchens, a.k.a. Gunna, lawyers for both have suggested they're innocent, is not the first time the pair has been linked in a criminal case.
Many artists and advocates expressed concern about using rap lyrics in court, arguing that it unfairly targeted musicians and their art. Throughout the trial, Young Thug remained in custody, with multiple bail requests denied.
The case went to the jury on Friday after closing arguments. Vayovis is the third and final defendant to be tried in the 2011 killings of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. The two other men charged in this case were both convicted of first-degree murder and are serving life sentences in prison.
A Hampton Superior Court jury found 34-year-old Caius Vayovis guilty on 3 counts each of kidnapping, witness intimidation, and first-degree murder. He was sentenced to lifetime imprisonment.
I was first arrested, the police made it clear to me that they did not actually believe I was anything to do with the disappearance and murder of these men, but that they did believe I possessed some knowledge that would greatly assist in their investigation. The threats and the promises were instantaneous, and it was their express intent to squeeze on me. I've been in isolation for 3 years now. I've refused to talk to the cops. I've turned down all meetings, plea deals offered to me from the beginning. Just 1 month before this trial began, DA Capers called my attorney, Gavin Reardon, and told him he knew I did not kill him.
Vayovis of Pittsfield had pleaded not guilty to the charges connected to the murders of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. The men disappeared from a Pittsfield apartment in August 2011. Their dismembered bodies were discovered 2 weeks later in Beckett.
Frampton and Robert Chadwell. The 33-year-old Vayovis has 2 rows of bumps resembling horns implanted in his forehead, a 666 tattoo between them, and other facial and neck tattoos. After discussing the matter, a Hampton Superior Court judge on Thursday told defense lawyer James Reardon.
Jurors in the Hampton Superior Court trial of Caius Vayovis, accused of the Berkshire triple murder along with Adam Lee Hall and David Chalou, sat sober-faced as autopsy photos were shown. Judge C. Jeffrey Kinder warned the jurors that the photos might be disturbing and urged them to remain impartial. Dr. Hammers gave a detailed account of the injuries suffered by each victim, describing gunshot wounds, stab wounds, knife cuts, and bruises.
A day after a barrage of bullets.
In August 2011, just weeks before he was to testify against Hall, Robert Glasser, his roommate Edward Frampton, and their friend Chadwell, he disappeared from Pittsfield. Their dismembered bodies were found in Beckett 10 days later. According to prosecutors, Hall, 36, of Peru, Chalou, 46, of North Adams, and Vayovis, 32, of Pittsfield, kidnapped the victims from Frampton's home in the early hours of August 28, 2011, and shot them.
Guilty to murder, kidnapping, and witness intimidation. His attorney had argued about a month ago that it might be difficult to find impartial jurors in this case due to...
Both Hall and Chalou were found guilty in separate trials of 3 counts of first-degree murder and are serving life sentences without parole. Dr. Hammers detailed the injuries, starting with Chadwell, who had gunshot wounds to his shoulder, torso, and face. He also had 2 stab wounds on his neck, a blunt force injury to his chin causing multiple fractures in his jaw, and rib fractures. Chadwell's injuries included a significant cut from his pubic region to his rib cage, superficial wounds, and cuts on his arm, wrist, and torso. Frampton had 5 gunshot wounds, 1 in his left cheek, 1 in the back of his left shoulder, and 3 in his arms.
Execute and cover it all up. Hall has been called the mastermind, the one who needed Glasser dead because he was going to testify against him in a trial for a second.
He also had 3 stab wounds on his jawline, 1 on his neck, and multiple wounds on his torso, including a deep horizontal cut on his upper back that severed his spinal cord, a wound in his lower back, and 1 in his left thigh. Another wound extended from his pelvic area to the base of his ribs. Glasser had 3 gunshot wounds, 1 through his ear into his head, 1 in his left jaw, and 1 in his thigh. He also had 3 stab wounds on his back and a laceration over his eyebrow. His head had 3 hemorrhages, with bleeding under the scalp from blunt injury. His torso was cut apart near the liver, with portions of the liver displaced. Here we conclude our last chapter. When the judge's decision is made, tough gang leaders face their final punishment. Their hard fronts break, showing real emotions. Which case is the most thrilling? Comment in the comment box. Stay tuned for more gang leader sentencing.